Some memories never really disappear. They simply wait for the right moment to walk back into your life. I learned that on a cool autumn evening when I stood alone in the corner of my 20-year high school reunion, watching familiar faces laugh together, while wondering if anyone would notice if I quietly slipped out the front door. I had convinced myself that I came only to prove I had moved on from the past. Then I felt someone gently touch my shoulder. Before I could turn around, a soft voice whispered the words that instantly carried me back 2 decades. "You still owe me that date." In that single heartbeat, every regret, every missed opportunity, and every unanswered question came rushing back. And I realized that sometimes life gives us one final chance to finish the story we thought had ended long ago. Before we continue, if you believe kindness, forgiveness, and second chances can change lives, please take a moment to like this video. Leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Share this story with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Kindness Corner for more emotional stories that remind us how powerful love and compassion can truly be. Back in high school, I wasn't the kind of student people remembered. I wasn't the captain of any team, the class president, or the funniest kid in the room. I was quiet, hardworking, and usually found in the library instead of the cafeteria. My father had passed away when I was 14, and my mother worked 2 jobs just to keep food on our table. While other students talked about vacations, football games, and weekend parties, I worried about helping Mom pay bills and making sure my younger sister had everything she needed. Life had forced me to grow up faster than most of my classmates. There was one bright spot in those difficult years. Her name was Emily. She had the kind of smile that made ordinary days feel special. Unlike many of the popular students, she treated everyone with kindness. She remembered people's birthdays, helped struggling classmates with homework, and always thanked the cafeteria staff by name. I admired her from a distance, never believing someone like her would notice someone like me. To my surprise, she did notice. She often sat beside me during study hall, asking about books I was reading or sharing stories about her dream of becoming a teacher. We laughed together more than I ever expected. Little by little, my feelings for her grew stronger. Near graduation, after weeks of gathering courage, I finally asked if she would go on a date with me after finals. She smiled with genuine excitement and said yes, but life had other plans. The evening before our date, my mother was rushed to the hospital after collapsing from exhaustion. Between caring for my sister, visiting Mom, and taking extra shifts at a grocery store, I forgot everything else. My phone battery died, and in those days there were no social media messages waiting to explain what had happened. Emily waited outside the small diner for over an hour, while I never showed up. By the time everything settled down, embarrassment consumed me. I convinced myself she deserved someone more reliable. Instead of explaining, I accepted a job in another state and disappeared without saying goodbye. It was one of the biggest mistakes of my life. The years that followed were filled with responsibilities instead of dreams. I built a respectable career as an architect, cared for my mother until she recovered, and helped my sister graduate from college. Outwardly, life looked successful, but inside there was always an empty space reserved for one memory I never managed to replace. Every now and then, I would wonder what happened to Emily, but I never searched for her. Some regrets feel too heavy to reopen. When the reunion invitation arrived, I almost threw it away. Curiosity eventually won. I told myself it would simply be an evening of catching up with old classmates before returning to normal life. Standing in that ballroom, however, I felt more alone than ever. Groups of friends laughed over old yearbook photos, while couples proudly introduced spouses and children. I smiled politely but struggled to feel like I belonged. Then came that familiar whisper. When I turned around, there she was. Time had added grace instead of distance. There were a few gentle lines around her eyes, the kind earned through years of smiling, but her warmth remained exactly as I remembered. She looked at me with a mixture of amusement and emotion that instantly erased 20 years. Instead of anger, she carried understanding. She admitted she had spent years wondering why I never came. She confessed that for a long time, she believed she had done something wrong. Hearing that hurt more than any criticism ever could. I finally told her everything about my mother's illness, my family's struggles, and the fear that convinced me disappearing was easier than admitting I had failed. Tears filled her eyes before she quietly admitted that she had wished I would have simply told her the truth. She said she never wanted perfection. She only wanted honesty. Those words stayed with me for the rest of the evening. We spent hours walking through old classrooms, laughing about forgotten teachers, embarrassing hairstyles, and school traditions that once seemed so important. Yet beneath every shared memory was an unspoken realization that life had shaped both of us through joy and heartbreak. Emily eventually shared her own story. She had become an elementary school teacher, just as she had dreamed. She had married young, believing love alone could overcome every obstacle. Sadly, her husband passed away after a long illness several years earlier, leaving her to rebuild a life she never expected to face alone. Despite unimaginable loss, she continued teaching because she believed every child deserved someone who believed in them. Listening to her, I realized that pain had not made her bitter. It had made her kinder. As the reunion came to an end, we walked into the cool night air beneath a sky filled with stars. The parking lot was almost empty. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Some silences are uncomfortable, others are healing. Emily smiled and reminded me that, technically, I still owed her one date. This time, I didn't hesitate. The following Saturday, we met at the same little diner that had somehow survived 20 years of changing neighborhoods. The owner had changed, the booths had been replaced, and the menu looked different, but the feeling was strangely familiar. We talked for hours without checking our phones or watching the clock. It felt less like meeting someone new and more like finally returning home after being lost for a very long time. Over the following months, our friendship slowly became something deeper. We volunteered together at community events, helped organize school supply drives for children in need, and visited my mother, who immediately recognized Emily from old graduation photos she had secretly kept all those years. One afternoon, my mother quietly told me that life rarely gives people a second opportunity to correct the mistakes of youth. She urged me not to waste the gift standing in front of me. She was right. Nearly a year after the reunion, I took Emily back to our old high school football field during sunset. The bleachers were empty, just as they had been after our final home game years before. Standing there, I apologized one last time, not because she still needed to hear it, but because I needed to finally let go of the guilt I had carried for half my life. Then, I asked if she would spend the rest of her life making new memories instead of mourning old ones. Her answer came with tears, laughter, and the same beautiful smile that had first captured my heart decades earlier. Sometimes, the greatest love stories aren't the ones that begin perfectly. They're the ones that survive time, heartbreak, mistakes, and distance before finding their way back together. We often believe a missed opportunity means the story is over. But life has a remarkable way of surprising those who keep their hearts open. Kindness, honesty, and forgiveness can rebuild bridges that regret alone never could. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to Kindness Corner so we can continue sharing stories that inspire hope and remind us that love often arrives exactly when we need it most. Special request, before you leave, tell us in the comments, have you ever been given a second chance that changed your life forever? As we drove away from that old football field, hand in hand, I realized something beautiful. The date I had missed 20 years earlier hadn't been lost forever. Life had simply postponed it until we had both become the people we were always meant to be. Sometimes love isn't about perfect timing. It's about never giving up on the possibility that tomorrow can heal what yesterday could not. And for us, the sweetest chapter wasn't the one we almost had in high school. It was the one we finally chose to write together.